travel around and we would go to shows together and we would meet people and a lot of the stuff that happened on Dancehall Minded went from being like online to IRL. But it's New York, so you could do that shit every day, 7 days a week. It really helped me to sort of define my sense of global community, which I have now. A, differentiate myself from everybody, and be really fucking good at whatever it is I choose to do. There's a kinship that exists of all the people that were part of that community at that time, you know, and it was that sort of kinship that actually made the whole thing function.
Hey there, it's me, Roxy Cottontail. You might know me as a DJ, artist, designer, and New York City party promoter, or from my bunny logo. I'm putting all that on the table and writing about the years that transformed music and the New York City scene. I've interviewed 250 friends and colleagues I admire. I ask all and reveal all. Please join me and the Tales to rediscover the 90s and the Y2K magical landscape of music, art, technology, and streetwear. This is Roxy's Tales.
Let's introduce who you are and
Cool.
your stage name, what you did and what you do.
My name is Christopher, and I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and I DJ and produce music under the moniker of Jillionaire.
My guest this week on Roxy's Tales is a legendary soundboy and culture clasher, Jillionaire. A creator who wears many hats, Jillionaire is a DJ, producer, and hype man to audiences, and lucky for us, his friends. A Soca King from Trinidad, Jilli has bridged the gap of the Caribbean to North America with Major Lazer and more. His influences are deep, and our interview was nothing short of inspirational. Without further ado, Jillionaire.
In 2000, I always had an affinity for music and technology. So I went to school. I did computer studies and management. I went into IT consulting. I did that for about 10 years. And then in 2006, I quit my job and I opened a event space in Trinidad because I would travel regularly and I wanted to bring a certain, there were things that I would see that I was like, oh, like we should have something like this in Trinidad. We should have a place where people from all different walks of life can come in and interact, and it's high design and it's cocktails and it's sexy and it's live music and all these things. So I did that. It was way ahead of its time.
How many years did you do that?
For about 3 years. I think it took us probably like a full year just to get the place together and to secure funding and so on. That was a huge challenge. And then I ran it for about 2 years. I met M.I.A. and Switch, I want to say in 2006, somewhere around there.
At the venue?
No. This is before the event. This is kind of like when I was building the venue. But what happened was there was this board that I used to go on called Dancehall Minded, and the board was run by a lady by the name of Jackie Jusom, who is an American lady who lives in Jamaica now, and she was managing Bounty Killer and Baby Sham at the time. And Baby Sham had done a remix trade with M.I.A. on her first, either London Calling or Galang, like her first 2 records. And Jackie hit me up and she's like, hey, I have a friend who's coming to Trinidad. I just want to put you guys in contact. Can you look out for her? And I was like, yeah, cool. And it was super random because the Piracy Funds Terrorism mixtape had just come out. And at the time, that sort of music, as you know, was super niche. So it was like, oh, this is like this really cool and random and weird thing. And she came to Trinidad and we subsequently became friends. They left. They went on to finish that album, which was the album with Paper Planes and so on. And then after they did the album, Diplo and Switch wanted to do like another project, and because they figured like they had a similar style in terms of work ethic and so on and so on, and they went on. They wanted to do the Major Lazer thing, and they had reached out to me to get some vocals for a track from a local guy. And this was like in 2008, 2009. Electronic music was so super indie at the time that I think that we didn't realize how small it was. because I mean, sorry, I'm speaking for myself. I didn't realize how small it was because it was something that was you were sort of like in a feedback loop, right? So all your friends were into it, and like all your friends would listen to this weird music, and then you would meet DJs and you'd go to these clubs and whatever, but not realizing that like this is like 50, 60 people in a city. It's like this is not like some massive phenomenon. Not that you expect it to be, but you just think oh, like this stuff is great. Like everybody should be into this.
It's also
So
before like EDM became.
yeah, that was kind of fascinating to me because once I started to realize that it wasn't actually like this isn't actually like a big thing, it was sort of no, not necessarily a conscious effort, but it was sort of like this thing where oh, like you can go out and seek out community. Like you can go out and seek out like a dance music community, right? Because it reminded me a lot of like dancehall in the United States, where the dancehall community in the United States, where we came from that same board, Dancehall Minded, was very small, right? And we would travel around and we would go to shows together and we would meet people. And a lot of the stuff that happened on Dancehall Minded went from being like online to IRL because that was also like a time when it was still like AOL Instant Messenger. And it was kind of weird to tell somebody that, like you met online, and I guess the hollowboard was sort of doing the same thing at the same time, where it's like you had people that were on the hollowboard who were also, like creating real life relationships.
Yeah.
My introduction to nightlife was always centered around like club music culture um, in New York. But at the same time, we were also going to. I had another friend who worked in nightlife. I think he was like a bartender or something, and he would so like we would always just go to clubs with him. And I mean, like we didn't know. So it's like Twilo and Magnum 45 and
Milo was my first like mega club.
yeah.
Basement Jacks there in like
Yeah,
2000.
yeah. Vinyl, home. Like yeah. So
Mhm.
it was kind of like a mix. I think like my experience was sort of a mix of three things. It was like this this friend that we had who worked in nightlife, so he was able to get us into the clubs because back then there were a lot of places that you
Just
can just go to, you know.
yeah.
And then I had a friend who was at Pace at the time. So you're talking about we were still in college, and he he would go to a lot of the clubs too. So like sometimes I would go to the clubs with him, but his clubs were more like the fancier places like Avenue and Pink Elephant and that sort of thing. And then my friend Janice, who was into like deep house. So it sort of kind of like spanned those three worlds. But it's New York, so you could do that shit every day, 7 days a week, and have a complete different a complete different experience. Um,
Were you so you were still living in Trinidad then? No.
I was living in Trinidad, and I think the first time I ran away to New York was maybe in 2000. So I think it was like late 99, early 2000, and I had made friends on the Dancehall Minded board, and I was DJing reggae and dancehall at the time, and I was just fascinated by dancehall culture on the East Coast, and that sort of led to a fascination with club culture as well. And yeah, because it was like there was like a different club for every night of the week. So you would go to Halo on a Sunday, and then I mean like your thing probably came after that. Because when did you guys start doing
Well, I started Sway with Aaron and Mike Stace in 2004, and it,
yeah
it was a Retail Mafia present. So it was like
yeah
Life, Sir, all these downtown
yeah
wear brands. But then, I was doing once a month a party called Girl on Girl with all female DJs, And then I started just taking it over like gradually. And so it wasn't really until like 2006 until it became like my presentation. So it was
Yeah.
like all me. But then it was, I think, 2007 until we did like the first Rice and Peas.
A lot of those people that I met during that time in the late 2000s, early 2010s are still very close friends of mine. Still people that I talk to, once a week, or a couple of times a month or whatever's the case, So
But you had some friends develop from, what was the board?
from Dancehall Minded.
Yeah.
So Dancehall Minded was sort of like a holler board for dancehall.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of characters on there, and I think that the reason why a lot of those boards worked so well in that time is because the internet was so new and it was just so fascinating
Yeah.
because it was like, oh, I can go on this board and I can talk about this stuff that I like, and have these like really weird, in retrospect, like super nerdy, super niche, also super irrelevant debates about in songs and production credits and samples and club nights and this, that, and the next, and for us, like it's like song clash culture, and it was a big thing, So like you could go and talk about song clash culture on there for days, But it was also weird because the internet was so new. A lot of us were sneaking time at our jobs to go and check these boards. Um, but a lot of us, because the community was so small, a lot of us were also like, all right, cool, like yo, like if you're in New York, let's meet up. Like we all in Brooklyn, or
Yeah.
we all, like we all around. So let's meet up and do something, So like we would meet up and then go to clubs together. So like it went from like this funny online community, to a real community of friends, to going to housewarmings, bachelor parties, weddings, baby showers, all of it, So it really helped me to sort of define my sense of global community, which I have now, and that to me is still like the greatest reward, because it really sort of conditioned me to have this great global community that wasn't just limited to um, you know, for a lot of people at the time, just to like your own hometown, or like the people that you went to college with.
Yeah. And I think like our generation, or what that time was, is like we got to have this global community, which like no other generation had, because we had the birth of the internet, like right
Yeah,
during that
yeah.
time. I mean, you kind of answered questions that I had, was like, where else were you going out at this time? Were you intimidated? I feel like you were always felt welcomed. True.
One, I always felt welcome because I was sort of an outsider, but then I also felt like I had an obligation to prove myself in a sense. And that's how I've always felt in life. Is that I think that coming from Trinidad, and coming into that world, was like, oh, like if this is a very niche culture that's already very competitive, I need to differentiate myself from everybody, and be really fucking good at whatever it is I choose to do. So that was always sort of like front and center for me. And I feel like I had a lot of friends at the time who felt the same way. And I think that a lot of the attitude of club music, and then what eventually became Major Lazer at the time, when now that I look back at the history of like punk music, a few decades prior, it was something very similar. It was just like, we didn't have shit, but we wanted we would let you know that we were really good at at what we do, and
Yeah.
we would continue to work hard at it, and we continue to be good at it. And if you don't like that, I'll punch you in your face. You know, when you had to fight for it, it meant so much more to you. And I think that there's a lot less fighting for fighting to be great. Like there's a lot of good and there's a lot of, oh, like that's okay, that's cool. But I think that that whole idea of fighting to be great is getting lost.
Yeah, but also like we weren't getting participation awards. You know what I mean?
That has also existed for a very long time. And for me, I think that it's frustrating because like I think about girl DJs a lot, and I have a lot of the girl DJs became very close to me. Jess, I still talk to Jess all the time. That's like my sister, Gina Turner. We were always very close. Louisa and I were always very close. I think Louisa picked me up from the airport when I first moved to LA. So I had a very close relationship with a lot of the girl DJs from within our crew, and it was good to come up in a time when you had to be good at what you were doing.
For sure. Yeah, and like what you were saying, like about like this global community that we were building, because we were all in the trenches, and it's built, like what we built was on the strength of our reputation, and being like in our area and just grinding it out.
I think it was like going to the same high school. It's like, oh, like, yeah, I went to high school with that person. We all sort of, like what I think that in the Western system, there's a hierarchy that exists up until you get out of high school, and then maybe people go to college, but then like the social hierarchy becomes far more nuanced, right? So social hierarchy now begins to depend on basically like on how much money you got. But at the same time, I think that cultural and geographic interests and similarities are a big part of developing that community as well. There's a kinship that exists of all the people that were part of that community at that time, and it was that sort of kinship that actually made the whole thing function.
Did you have a favorite Roxy Cottontail event from back then?
Yeah, I think that the Morrissey thing was just so different from what I grew up with.
That was Sunday nights.
Yeah, that was Sunday night.
Yeah.
So I think that for me was 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 um was particularly compelling because I didn't grow up around that kind of music. So for me, as much as like a lot of the other like club music and electronic music and stuff at the time was new to me, it was new to me because a lot of it was new anyway. But this was new to me because it was like this is a whole genre of music that I wasn't in, that I sort of knew exists, but I wasn't entirely familiar with.
I was booking like the Monday nights, and then also attending Sundays for Morrissey, but I wasn't programming Sunday nights. It was Monday nights was like my baby, and I was booking Gravy and Max independently, and then they had the idea like, we want to do this party and we want to do it monthly, and that's kind of how. And then Jasmine and Mello were hosts of Rice and Peas with me.
I remember, yeah. I mean, I used to go there. I used to go there all the time. And that's what I'm saying, because the reason that it's really important for those spaces to exist is because more than anything, people need cultural representation, right? So I think that one of the huge things that we were able to achieve with Major Lazer, for instance, is having kids from the Caribbean or having Black kids even go to a festival and be like, oh, like that's me on that stage, I could do that too. And then what you found happening after that was a lot more kids that were making tropical bass, that were from Latin American countries, South America, Central America, the Caribbean, the Africas, even people in Europe, people like Savage Skulls, for instance, who were making weird music, were able to step out and say, hey, like this is what I do, and I make weird music, and I no longer have to sort of like disguise it or tone it down or dilute it, because I just want to be unapologetic. And I think that creating creating, it's important that you guys were able to create a space where people could be unapologetic about not just about their own culture, but also about their love for another culture.
You know, you had like a intertwining network kind of already, from
Yeah.
your club in Trinidad and then your friends in New York. But was there anyone that you ever met that has like from that era that changed your trajectory and your career?
I mean, everybody did. If there was no no rice and peas and no federation song, you know, bringing um, dancehall and eventually soca music into the city, then there would be very little context for what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
If there was no Rando on a Tuesday night, you know, if there was no Diddy Saw Joe, and if there was no um, Trouble and Bass, and if there was, you know, if there were none of these things, it would have made it very difficult for me just being like, oh, like, hey, like, I'm just kind of like weird Trinidadian kid who plays a little bit of club music and a little bit of dancehall, and I play a soca record from time to time, you know, and check out my remixes, you know. It's like, I think that it wasn't necessarily about one specific person for me, but it was about the fact that the, this diverse cultural community exists that would allow people to explore all these weird and crazy and different ideas without any type of judgment. When I talk to a lot of the guys who were doing club music and who were making Latin and Caribbean inspired records in the mid to late 2000s and mid to late 2010s, a lot of the ones in America came from punk, you know. So Dave Nada was in punk bands, and
Yeah, I grew up outside of DC. So
yeah,
that whole like there, I feel like that hardcore punk mentality was so close knit. Like you're gonna look out for your people, and it's a similar mentality.
I think
Like
it's
you're saying,
I think it's a similar mentality. I think a lot of that. I mean, obviously, money makes things funny, but I think a lot of that sort of got a little tarnished once it became like an EDM thing.
yeah,
But I think that when it was just club music, yeah, it was a lot of looking out. You know, I mean, like I have a long list of people who I still, you know, care deeply about and owe a lot to. You know, like anybody who's ever, you know, put me on a flyer or let me sleep on a couch or, you know, introduce me just to somebody else in another city. You know, it's like I have a deep appreciation for that. A lot of those guys looked out. You know, and I think that in a sense, a lot of those guys continue to look out, and it's definitely a strong community of people who feel good and are happy and make the best of their circumstances. And I think that, you know, being able to have that has sort of always helped us through the difficult times. I think that community allowed a lot of us to confront difficult times because we're just like, all right, cool, you know, like this is I'm not really entirely too sure what I'm doing here, and if this whole like DJing thing or this music thing is going to work out, but you know what, like I'm having a good time and I love my friends.
yeah, oh yeah,
That specific time was really magical, and it's it was so instrumental in defining how culture and music has evolved in the United States in general, because it was like you said, it was beginning of the internet. So it was sort of like taking this weird mashup culture that Rockticon and AM and A-Track and a handful of guys had sort of created on their own and legitimized it and took it across the country, and then it eventually became mainstream, you know. And so there was something that was just kind of like super magical and random about that time, and I think it had a lot to do with the mindset of I have nothing to lose, so I'm just gonna have a good time.
Yeah, it was magic.
This has been a great conversation, and I thank
Yes,
you again
thank
for
you.
allowing me to be part of your project.
Thanks for hopping by. That's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, and stalk. Bounce, little kitty.